Chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Vargas, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. What are we doing after dinner? We've had 2 meetings so far, one after breakfast, one after lunch. I assume we'll have one more meeting after dinner. It's been, again. I'll buy. All right. Great. And I hate to challenge my good friend, Mr. Sherman, but Mr. Sherman used a term that he didn't define, and I think it'd be very hard to define at the moment, and that is pre-balloon. We don't know exactly how long the balloons have been flying over our country, so we don't know exactly when the pre-balloon era started.
If the gentleman will yield, I'll point out we are now post-balloon.
We're post-balloon now. Okay, well, that makes more sense to me. Again, this has been very exciting, actually, to listen to all of you, and I appreciate it very, very much. I do have some questions, obviously. Ms. Thornton, you said we should rebalance the public-private market, I believe. And how should we do that?
Well, one way is the way that I mentioned to Congressman Sherman about modifying Section 12G to say that holder of record is actual shareholders, beneficial owners of securities. Another, of course, would be what he alluded to, which is to say that large companies that are have a certain value are subject to the public disclosure framework. Or you could say that companies that have a certain number of employees would need to comply with the public disclosure framework. And aside from that, I think that it's really important for policymakers, for Congress and the SEC to look at the existing exemptions and consider whether they really are doing what we think that they're doing and what we want them to do. When you look at what's going on right now, just because an exemption is expanded, to allow retail investors who are less wealthy to participate and to invest in these funds doesn't guarantee that there will be more investment in businesses run by women and minorities. Doubling down on a system that we've had, like, I think I counted 14 expansions of the different exemptions since 1982, including the 1982 Reg D, and doubling down on a system that's already shown not to promote women and minorities is unlikely to help. So I would encourage you to think about that and to look at the different exemptions and consider how they might be scaled back.
Mr. Elenoff, I think it would be appropriate to give you an opportunity to respond to that. What would you think about those?
I appreciate the opportunity. I have in front of me the annual report from the Office of the Advocate for the Small Business Capital Formation, and they have 2 bubbles in crowdfunding that I think may be instructive and responsive to that comment. 41% of crowdfunded issuers that raised $1 million or more had minority founders. Another thought bubble, 46% of crowdfunded issuers that raised $1 million or more had women founders. And I would encourage everybody on the committee to go and review this annual report, and I think you will see outstanding statistics that support not only that underrepresented people raise money much more effectively pursuant to these Jobs Act exemptions, including Reg A+, 506C, but if you look at the geographic dispersion in their charts, along with what's on Crowdfund Capital Advisor's site, you'll see that almost every state in the union is represented, as opposed to what happens with 506B venture deals.
Thank you. I do want to challenge one premise that I think is underneath all of this, or not challenge it, but ask about it, and that is the issue of returns, so that the private markets have better returns in general than the public markets. Back in 2019, we had Professor Elizabeth de Fontenay testifying that that's not the case, my understanding. Could you comment on that, Ms. Thornton?
Sure, I'd be happy to. When you look at the private markets, private market participants don't have to disclose information. So that should be a red flag right there. Even the financials that they do disclose are not necessarily audited by independent auditors. So, and the information often isn't timely. There's information given to some investors that's not given to others. What does this create? This creates an environment where valuations can be inflated, and there's copious evidence that valuations are inflated in the private markets. What happens is these companies, when they go public, that becomes, they stay in the private markets for a long time because they can raise a lot of capital now that there are all these exemptions. But when it comes time to cash out, when the original investors want to cash out, they do an IPO and retail investors invest, and they're the ones who lose out because the company was overvalued. There's evidence, I think Goldman Sachs did a study that showed that something like 28% of the companies that went through IPOs like this declined in value tremendously.
My time is up. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.